Welcome to the Billionaire Belief Show. This is Dane, and I'll be your guide today. Thank you for tuning in. Billionaire Belief is an entrepreneurship development guide that shows you how to make the transition from student to CEO so you can have a clear path to building a profitable and professional business you love to own that works without you. Today's topic is education isn't something you can finish. Let's dive in. Education isn't something you can finish. That was a quote that I came across, I want to say last week, and it really resonated with me because it got me thinking about a different topic that I've been talking about. And the quote was by, you know my name, Isaac Asimov. But the quote had me thinking, and it took me back to my college days when I personally first understood this concept, this lesson, because after spending all that time in college, I was a business major, and I chose business because I was under the impression that I was going to learn how to become an entrepreneur or learn the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. And so when it was time for me to graduate, I realized that I I was no better prepared for entrepreneurship than I was when I first got to campus. So that's when I realized, I still have a lot to learn. There's still some lessons out there that I haven't taken yet that I know are going to be essential in order for me to, become the entrepreneur that I was envisioning myself becoming. And so it was at that point that I made a commitment to always be learning because I understood now that even though I had spent time in college and I had got good grades and I had participated in student organizations, there was still some very, very, very important lessons that I hadn't learned about entrepreneurship, business, and just overall about life. And so I rededicated or dedicated myself to a lifetime of learning, and it paid off. But it was important for me to have this discussion today because you know I I I talk to a lot of people, and just throughout the years of just living, I've always heard people say something like, "Oh, now that I've graduated from high school, or now that I've graduated from college, I don't have to learn anything anymore." It was as if these people didn't understand that, you just finished. Yes, you just finished one level of life, one level of learning, but your education never stops. So I just wanted to take a moment just to have this discussion with you, just so that you could just understand the importance of knowledge, the importance of education, and understanding that, like, at the end of the day, education is a lifelong journey. So you're never done learning. Your education is never over. So let's dive in. Point number one: what is education? Now, most of us don't. I mean, we just think education is just something that we need in order to get a job, because most Americans are taught to believe that. Most Americans are taught to believe that an education, a college degree specifically, is the master key to economic success and upward mobility. But that's not the case. So, what is education? Education is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. So, as it says, education is the process, not a destination, not something you finish. Education is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction. So you're trying to complete some task, and you need some instruction so that you can be competent enough to complete the task. So that's why you got to get some education. You got to learn some things. You got to get some knowledge. So understand that, as the definition says, it's a process of receiving or giving. That's what education is. So you're either receiving some instruction, or you're giving some instruction. So again, we are all educators in life. Every last one of us, every human being is an educator, because we all give instruction and we all receive instruction. So that's point one. Point number two: you got to understand that there are three types of education out there. The first type of education is formal education, and that's where you have structured lessons or structured instruction in a traditional school setting. So think again, your traditional elementary, junior high, high school, college, formal education. Anytime there's a syllabus or a lesson plan or some sort of curriculum, that's and it's in school and in a school setting, then that's called formal education. Now the next type of education is called non-formal education, and that's where you have structured lessons outside of a school setting. So think any book, any webinar, any seminar, any conference, any type of structured. So again, lesson plan, syllabus, curriculum, but it's just not being done in a school setting. So again, offline. I mean not offline, but online. So if you're on a Zoom call or on a webinar, or you're watching videos on YouTube, or you're reading some blog posts at your favorite blog, all that would be considered non-formal education. The last type of education is called informal education, and that's where the lessons are unstructured. So just think of having a conversation with someone, or just casual conversation, or you know, you hanging out with a buddy, and you're just trying to show them something. Like that would be considered informal education. So now that you're aware that there are three types of education: formal education, non-formal education, and informal education. Let's get down to the nitty gritty of this. Now, most people are taught to believe that there's really only one type of education, which is formal education. And because we're taught to believe there's only one type of education, formal education, we don't really put any weight. We don't really give gravity to the other two types of education that are out there, which is non-formal and informal education. We tell ourselves that the lessons that we're learning in books or just from our own self-study guides or self-study plan or our own personal development plan, we really don't put any weight. We don't really, take it as seriously as we should, because again, we're just taught to believe that it's not quote unquote real education if some teacher or some authority figure isn't giving the instruction, someone who we perceive to have more knowledge than us, or more credentials than us, more credibility than us on a topic. And so we don't really take it seriously. And so when we're sitting down, or walking down the street, sitting down someplace or walking down the street someplace, and we're hearing somebody giving some instruction, that in a more informal manner, then we don't really pay it any attention. But little do we know that informal education is actually the secret sauce. It's the secret to success, believe it or not, because you gotta understand, all formal education, anything that has a curriculum, that means that it was designed to give you some specific type of knowledge so that you can complete some specific outcome, some specific task. So if you aren't the person who is the architect of the curriculum, of the lesson plan, then you got to take time to understand, like, who is the architect, and then what was their purpose for creating this education, because that's going to give you an idea as to whether or not the education that you are quote unquote involved in is actually going to help you achieve your goals, or help you, like you said, develop the competency that you need. For example, going back to me, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to own my own business, and so I didn't initially want to go to college. But then after being told that I was going to go to college, I figured, hey, well, I guess I'll learn about business and entrepreneurship. So that's why I majored in business administration. But just that in and of itself, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I was majoring in business administration. So that was already part of me not understanding, what I was getting myself into, because if I had just known better, I would have realized that a business administration degree wasn't actually going to help me become the entrepreneur that I wanted to become, because again, I needed to learn the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, not the fundamentals of business administration. But therein lies the rub. Because you don't know what you don't know, and a young kid fresh out of high school going into college, you're pretty much operating primarily through fear, and you still have this permission-based mindset where you, from high school, where you believe that, like I said, you're taught to believe that as the instruction must come from some sort of credible authority figure. So what ultimately happens is like you never really learn the lessons you need to learn and then have the confidence and courage to move forward because again you're just waiting to be validated in a sense. And so realize that non-formal and informal education, which is basically personal development and self-education, that's how you get ahead in life. You can take people's courses, but understand that college isn't the only place where you can get knowledge. Like most Americans and most people are taught to believe, college, high school, elementary school. Those aren't the only sources of knowledge. There's every human being has some knowledge to share. You just got to know what questions to ask them. But knowing what questions to ask them ultimately stems from you having a sense of direction in your life. So looking back on things, knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, you know, I should have, it would have been better for me, I should say, if I would have had the confidence and courage to operate through I mean, if I would have been thinking through confidence and courage, I should say, that would have allowed me to be able to ask the people the right types of questions I need to ask because I wouldn't have been afraid of, feeling embarrassed because I didn't know something. So be mindful. Three types of education: formal, non-formal, and informal. And understand that non-formal and informal is really how you separate yourself from the pack. Because again, most Americans are taught to believe that as long as they finish high school or they graduate from college and get a degree, that they have completed their education. And a lot of them, they never learn anything else new in a sense. They never develop their skill set. They never, expand their domain of knowledge because again, they have been taught to believe that as long as you got this high school diploma and or this college or university degree, then you are educated. But again, as we go back to our title, education is something you can't finish. It is something you can finish, I should say. So always be learning, ladies and gentlemen. Never stop learning, and don't just think that formal education is all you need. Now, I will put a disclaimer here. There are certain types of careers, quote unquote, or just business opportunities that will require, you know, um, formal education only because that's really like the only place you can get the knowledge, you can get the game. Now, granted, you can learn how to become an engineer, a doctor, a scientist, anything within STEM through non-formal and informal education. But in order for you to, if your ambition is to work for a company, then more often than not, they're going to want to see that you have some formal education in the topic. You can still get over if you can articulate or communicate, to these people that you just know your stuff and you can be a value add. But for most people, again, they don't develop the knowledge. I mean, the communication skills to be able to do that. So that's why they rely primarily on formal education. But like I said, you don't necessarily need it. But it is, like you said, for some professions, it is required. So, for example, if you want to become a doctor, you're going to most likely take some sort of biology in undergrad. Then when you go to medical school, you're going to take some sort of, you're going to learn, the gist of the human body. But again, a medical school that is different than, let's just say, going to college for a degree in llama milking or basket weaving, as they would say. Those aren't real majors, but just for the sake of argument, those aren't really marketable skills because no one's necessarily looking for a llama milker or a basket weaver. But people are always looking for doctors. So point number 3: what is the purpose of education? Now, a lot of times people think that the purpose of education, because they're taught this, is just to get a good job. But the more I studied entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires, the more I began to learn that the true purpose of education was to make sure that you could execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. So, for example, think of learning how to tie your shoe. When you first learn how to tie your shoe, it takes you a long time because you got to really concentrate, you got to really focus. You got to put one over the left. People there. You got to pay attention to when you're being shown these things. But with practice and over time, you eventually develop a level of competency, and to where you can eventually start to execute effortlessly to the point where you can walk and tie your shoes. You can be on the phone and tie your shoes. You could have something. You can multitask and still tie your shoes. Why? Because you've developed a level of mastery with the task, and so now you can execute effortlessly. So with that being said, that's the purpose of knowledge. That's the purpose of education, so that you can execute effortlessly. So, for example, if you want to learn how to make the transition from student to CEO, then you're gonna so that you can execute effortlessly in your job and your task. And there's just certain lessons that you're gonna have to learn, but you're just not learning these lessons to just store these facts in your mind and never do nothing. No, you're learning these things so that, again, you could take specific actions and make specific you know and 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 and, and accomplish certain tasks without you having to exhaust so much conscious resources. Like, again, focus, concentration. So that's why you're learning. That's why you're going to school. That's why you're developing a sense of education, not so that you could just store random facts that you can just regurgitate when people ask you some questions. It's just like, no, so that you can execute effortlessly, so that you can solve problems effortlessly without the use of conscious effort or conscious resources. That's the whole purpose of education, right? So moving forward, realize that, again, you're not just learning anything just to learn it. You're just learning it so that you can take action. So if you're as you get into the entrepreneurial space and you start having to do things on your own, you're gonna have to learn a lot, which means you're gonna be reading a lot of books and from taking courses, watching videos from a non-formal and informal perspective. But the reason why you're doing this is not just so you can just have the knowledge in your mind. You're having it and you're doing this so that you can execute effortlessly. So if you decide that for example, right now I'm studying, I'm learning, I'm taking some non-formal education, a course, to learn how to become a loan signing agent. Now the purpose, again, isn't just so I can just learn this stuff. It's so I can execute effortlessly in the job. So that when people need their loan documents notarized, there's certain documents that need to be notarized. They'll call a guy like me, and I'll just be able to go execute effortlessly because I've taken the time to understand the paperwork, to learn what it's asking and what why it needs to be filled out the way it needs to be filled out, so that like I said, we can execute effortlessly. So the people buying or selling the house can complete their transaction on time, and everybody can get paid. So again, the purpose of education is to execute effortlessly without the use of conscious resources. Next, point 4, in closing, understand that the greatest lesson you will ever learn in life is that you still have a lot to learn. That quote is from an unknown source, but it is very matter of fact for this topic, and because, again, like, you're never done learning. You'll never reach a point where you know it all. So always be learning, always be figuring out, again, and if you're really about that life, if you're really trying to move forward and make progress, then you're gonna always be needing to learn something new. And but again, not so that you can just know it, but just so that you can start to execute effortlessly. All right. So again, the greatest lesson you will ever learn in life is that you still have a lot to learn. So that does it for this edition of the Billionaire Belief Show. Make sure that you head over to billionairebelief.net because, again, if you're trying to navigate that transition from student to CEO and you need a clear path to business success, then go ahead and download the Beyond Aspiration Roadmap so you can actually learn or see just the stepping stones that you're going to need to cross in order to get from student to CEO. Because, again, you're going to have to transition from student to CEO. You're going to have to transition from or to make the transition from student to CEO, there's really 3 phases you got to go through. You got to go from student to worker, then you got to go from worker to founder, and then from founder to CEO. And you no longer have to worry about the steps that you need to take to get there because, again, the Beyond Aspiration Roadmap is your guide. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on whatever platform you're listening to this on, or you can shoot me an email, billionairebelief@gmail.com. It's a pleasure as always. This is Dane. I am your guide. Thanks for tuning in. Make it a great day. Peace.